Husband divorces and ghosts cheating wife after she tries to legitimize her affair with her boss. Today, my marriage might officially end, though in my heart, I feel it's already over. My wife just gave birth, and while I sit alone in a bar just minutes from the hospital, I'm awaiting the results of a DNA test that will confirm what I already know. I take another shot, ignoring the missed calls from my wife, my kids, and even my in-laws. They're all eager to know the outcome, but I need time to process what's happened. The baby is beautiful, with her mother's blonde curls. A healthy, full-term baby weighing pounds, ounces, and inches long. Yet, my wife insists she was born prematurely by weeks. I might not have a medical degree, but I know enough to question her story. A child born 6 weeks early wouldn't appear so perfectly developed. The lies are unraveling, and the truth stings. The child she claims is mine actually belongs to my late best friend. The memories rush in, and I'm overwhelmed by a sense of nostalgia, as if a lifetime has passed. Back then, it was always me, my wife Tracy, and my best friend Gary, the three, united by countless shared moments. Our families moved into the same neighborhood within 2 years of each other, and from that point on, we were a trio. Gary and I had been close long before Tracy moved in, but when she did, she fit right in. She was a tomboy, unafraid to join us in any game, kickball, stickball, you name it. But as we entered our teenage years, things changed, especially with Tracy. The skinny, pigtail girl we had grown up with was gone, replaced by a young woman, and both Gary and I noticed. One day, while Gary was out with his family, Tracy kissed me on the porch swing. It was my first kiss, and I was thrilled. But the next day, she acted as if nothing had changed. Then Gary asked her to the Christmas dance, and she said yes, leaving me heartbroken and feeling foolish. Time moved on, and so did we. Tracy and Gary became a couple in high school, while I drifted into other relationships and friendships. By college, though, Tracy and I reconnected. She and Gary had broken up, and she invited me to her sorority formal. We started dating, and 2 years later, we got married. Gary, despite his past with Tracy, stood by as my best man. Years passed, and we received the news that Gary was seriously ill. He returned home to say goodbye, and out of loyalty, Tracy suggested we help care for him until hospice was needed. Despite my reservations, I agreed. Gary had always been like a brother to us, and it felt like the right thing to do, even if it meant spending months apart as Tracy took on the responsibility of his care. Those months were difficult. Tracy was away often, and the strain on our relationship grew. I couldn't ignore the subtle glances and smiles exchanged between her and Gary, but I tried to dismiss my suspicions, blaming it on the stress we were all under. When Gary passed, Tracy came home distant at first, but then suddenly affectionate. We rekindled our intimacy, and within weeks, she announced she was pregnant. And with 2 grown children, I was shocked. Tracy admitted she had stopped taking her birth control, but reassured me that this was a blessing. But the joy of the pregnancy was overshadowed by something gnawing at me. And now, sitting here, I realize the painful truth: the child isn't mine. It's Gary's. As I finish my drink, I come to terms with the fact that my marriage is over. The DNA test will confirm it soon, but deep down, I already know the truth. Kaylee joked about how some of Tracy's maternity clothes seemed more suited to someone years younger. Well, Mom, it's not your fault if you're a MILF and someone took it too seriously, she teased. I noticed Tracy's quick frown, but it was the way Kaylee said, someone instead of Dad, that unsettled me. It reminded me of the anise I felt when I was in California with Gary. Over the weekend, I heard other comments that left me feeling like they were aimed at me or Tracy. Later, when Tracy was out of the room, I asked Kaylee how she felt about becoming a big sister again. She hesitated, avoiding my eyes, before nervously mumbling, "It's cool that Mom's still, hot, and you're like the man." She rushed out of the room, flustered. Tracy's pregnancy progressed, and she looked more beautiful every week. But the anise in me grew. A few months later, I got an unexpected call from Tracy while at work. "Hey, could you give me a ride to the hospital?" she asked in an oddly flirtatious tone. I felt alarmed. She was only 6 months pregnant. "Why the hospital, honey? Is everything okay?" I asked, panic creeping in. "Well, My water broke, and I don't feel like walking there, she said too calmly. I left work immediately, driving as fast as I could, all the while feeling something was off. Premature births are risky, but Tracy sounded calm, almost detached. When I arrived, she seemed unusually relaxed while I was a bundle of nerves. After hours, I held what I thought was our perfect little girl. But when the nurse handed me the baby, a sick feeling settled in my stomach. This baby was full term, right? I whispered to the doctor. He glanced at me, then at Tracy, who subtly shook her head. I'm sorry, Mr. Marsley, but I can't discuss her health with you due to HIPAA. He replied, his gaze avoiding mine. I lost control. To hell with HIPAA. If she's my child, I deserve to know. And if she's not, don't put my name on that birth certificate. The room fell silent. I stormed out, ripped off my scrubs, and went to a bar to drown my anger. I didn't return to the hospital until the next day. Tracy sat by the baby, looking sad but composed. Bobby, she said, her voice trembling. I didn't plan this. I was trying to support Gary. Things got complicated, and one night we crossed a line. We were together for 4 months, and I wasn't on birth control. It could have been you, but it wasn't. You were with him while Kaylee was here? I asked, the realization hitting hard. She nodded, blushing. Kaylee knew. She kept it a secret from me, Tracy admitted, tears spilling down her face. Did Jeffrey know? Our parents? I asked, feeling utterly betrayed. No, only you, me, and Kaylee know. I thought you'd understand. Geraldine might not be biologically yours, but she's ours to raise. We need to be there for her. She pleaded. Best friend, I spat. Gary wasn't a friend if he slept with my wife. And you think keeping it a secret makes it better? No, Tracy. I won't raise a child from your affair with Gary. Tracy looked crushed. I know I hurt you, Bobby, but can't we move past this? 24 years together, and you couldn't respect our vows. I can't raise a child from your affair with Gary, I said, walking away. The house felt hollow after the kids left. Tracy tried to involve me with the baby, but I refused. One night, her frustration boiled over. You're acting like a child, she shouted, thrusting the baby into my arms. Take responsibility. I stared at her, walking away without a word. Work became my refuge. Being at home felt like torment. I couldn't blame the baby, but I couldn't take responsibility for her either. Finally, I decided on a divorce. I couldn't forgive Tracy's betrayal, especially with the baby as a constant reminder. When I came home with the papers, Tracy was at the kitchen table, crying. Don't you love me anymore? She asked, her voice breaking. Not like I did. You've destroyed everything. I replied, trying to stay calm. I don't want a divorce. Please, can't you think this through? I have. This isn't just about me. It's about the promises we made. Promises you broke. My first call was to Jeffrey. He was devastated but supportive. And I reassured him that Tracy still loved him. But I won't raise Geraldine, I said. She's not my responsibility. I told my parents. Dad was furious at Tracy for cheating and at me for trusting her around Gary. You should have seen this coming. He said, you can't trust any man when it comes to your wife. Mom, however, sided with Tracy. Everyone makes mistakes. She said gently. She still loves you, and you're going to need to help raise that baby. The way she used my full name made it clear. She was taking Tracy's side. I didn't call my cousin Kay, figuring Tracy would have reached out to her after the papers were served. When Kay called later, she urged me to forgive Tracy for the sake of the baby. Step up, she said, but I couldn't do it. You didn't even tell your father about her cheating. I shot back before hanging up. But I was too angry to think clearly. Thanks for the confidence, I told them. But I can't get past what's happened. Tracy fought the divorce, and we went to counseling. But Dr. McAdams' biased approach only made things worse. I left and demanded a neutral counselor. Dr. Avant at least listened, but her judgment still weighed on me. It's about pride, she said. You've admitted you still care for her. There's a baby involved. What would it take for you to reconcile? It's not about pride, I replied. We were never truly a family. That's not my child, and I won't raise someone else's. So it's about pride? She pressed, a smug look on her face. I was exhausted. Why is everyone acting like I'm the problem? Tracy's the one who cheated. I'm not fixing that. Your relationship with Tracy was broken before Gary died. She was already distancing herself from you. Dr. Oven counted. I couldn't argue with that. Back home, Tracy tried again to reconcile. We were just kids when we met. Can't you remember how we used to laugh? She asked. I haven't felt that way in years. Please, Bobby. But I was done. She wouldn't be able to convince me otherwise. Dr. Avent nodded, but continued pressing. Mr. Martin, if you were to divorce and later marry a woman with children, wouldn't you in essence be raising another man's child? Maybe, I conceded, but Tracy's child was conceived while we were married. Isn't that a significant difference? Dr. Avent nodded slightly, but wasn't finished. Since the child's father is deceased, don't you think it's time to move forward? Isn't holding on to this anger being petty? Petty? I scoffed. Petty is knowing you've done wrong, but hiding it for months. Tracy didn't confess, she lied until I confronted her. If she truly loved me, she wouldn't have done any of it. This wasn't a one-time mistake. They had an ongoing affair. Dr. Oven's expression softened, but I'd had enough. Doc, I can't just turn off my feelings. I still care about Tracy, but that doesn't mean I can live with her betrayal. At our next counseling session, I barely spoke. Tracy begged and cried, but I didn't budge. Eventually, Dr. Oven informed the judge of our lack of progress, and 6 months later, just before Christmas, our divorce was finalized. Since we lived in a no-fault state, everything was split evenly. Tracy bought out my share of the house with funds from Gary's inheritance, and I agreed to pay alimony, given I earned more. I knew my son wanted to spend Christmas with Tracy and his baby half-sister, so I planned to celebrate New Year's with him instead. A couple of days before Christmas, I stopped by to drop off gifts. Tracy opened the door, holding the baby, Gary's baby. She looked surprised to see the gifts. As I stood in the familiar setting with holiday decorations all around, I felt a lump in my throat. Tracy noticed my reaction and hesitated. Would you like some eggnog, Bobby? She offered. And could you hold the baby for a moment? First holding her at arm's length, then cradling her in my arms. Tracy returned, watching us with a soft smile. You always had a way with the kids, she murmured. Not everyone has that touch. I forced a smile. The baby was beautiful and resembled her mother, which stirred a mix of tenderness and bitterness within me. After some small talk, Tracy placed the presents under the tree. She lingered at the gift with the baby's name on it. You didn't have to include her, Bobby, she whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. Christmas is for everyone, I replied softly. In different circumstances, she could have been my daughter. That night, memories of our Christmases together haunted me. I'd made the right choice, but the pain lingered. A year later, I'd settled into a quiet routine work. Home, no dating. My family kept pushing me to reconcile with Tracy to help raise the baby as my own. But I couldn't do it. Her betrayal had cut too deep. No amount of family persuasion could make me forget what she'd done. One evening, I was at a local bar when I ran into Carl and Susie Demi, friends from our old social circle. Their frosty reception caught me off guard. What did I do to you guys? I snapped, taken aback. Susie scoffed. It's not what you did to us, but to Tracy. Abandoning her just because she had a baby? She didn't deserve that. I sighed, frustrated. Is that what you think happened? Listen to this before you judge. I leaned in, lowering my voice. No one told you the baby isn't mine, did they? Tracy got pregnant by her ex, who passed away from cancer soon after. She tried to convince me the baby was mine. Years of marriage, and that's the loyalty I got. They fell silent, stunned. Screw her, screw both of you, and screw whatever else you believe. Leaving them behind, I realized how far apart my life had drifted from the past. That was my second Christmas alone, and it felt much like the first. On Christmas Eve, I ended up at Barnes & Noble's Losers Club. There were 4 of us, this time me, another man, and 2 women. One had curly red hair and a friendly smile. The other, a stunning Asian woman, had long black hair, curves hinted at through her sweatshirt and jeans, and flawless skin. She looked to be around, I decided. Why not? What was the worst that could happen? I approached her, coffee in hand, and introduced myself. I didn't see you here last Christmas Eve. New to the Losers Club? I'm Bobby, the club president. What brings a beautiful woman here on this special day? She laughed, and encouraged by her warmth, I went on. I actually have an extra hungry man dinner in my freezer. If you don't have plans, maybe we could share it." She hesitated, then smiled. "Well, since you're the club president and for a hungry man dinner I'm in. I'm Angel Wong, by the way." We set a time, and that evening I hurried home to prepare. Angel arrived promptly and over a simple meal and a bottle of Burgundy, we shared our stories. Angel had divorced a decade earlier, after a year marriage that had turned abusive. A counselor helped her see she deserved better. And though her ex was convicted of battery and had served time, the scars lingered. By the time we settled on the couch to watch Christmas movies, it felt like I'd known her forever. After A Christmas Carol and The Grinch, she drifted off during It's a Wonderful Life. I covered her with a quilt and soon dozed off too. When I woke, Angel's head was on my chest and my arm around her. She stirred, and as I lifted my head, I gently kissed her nose. Her cheeks turned pink. "Morning," she whispered shyly. "Merry Christmas," I replied, holding her a little closer. We lay there, wrapped in the warmth of the moment, until she quietly asked, "Do you feel this too?" "Yes," I answered without hesitation. Our lips met in a kiss that seemed to chase away the loneliness, as if we were exactly where we were meant to be. Afterward, I invited her to stay for Christmas dinner. She laughed, agreeing, "I'll need a shower and a change of clothes." "My shower's big enough for two," I teased. She blushed, but replied with a wink. "If you don't mind seeing me without makeup, I'm in." As I prepared dinner, we found a lightness in each other's company that I hadn't felt in years. That's when my son, Jeffrey, arrived unexpectedly. He stopped, clearly surprised. "Mom sent me to bring you back for Christmas dinner," he said, looking amused. "But I see you're not alone after all." After introductions, I sent Jeffrey on his way, promising to meet up later. Angel looked at me with a smile. "That wasn't too awkward, was it?" "Not at all," I replied, laughing. "Actually, how about ringing in the new year together too?" Our relationship grew from that moment, and within 6 months, we were rarely apart. My son supported us, though my parents and daughter still held out hope for a reunion with Tracy. A year later, Angel and I had a small wedding, even though my daughter, Kaylee, protested that Tracy wasn't invited. Years later, at Kaylee's wedding, Tracy and Angel met for the first time. Angel, sensing the tension, kept a respectful distance. But with her by my side, I felt a deep contentment I hadn't known in years. Even now, Tracy and her parents still believe Angel was just a temporary replacement. But as we recently celebrated years together, we've proven them wrong. It's been a quiet journey, but as I look back, I can say it was worth every twist and turn. In that moment, Dave eagerly took the lead. Although Lisa enjoyed herself, she could only reach her peak by closing her eyes and picturing John's touch. The next morning, even as Dave woke her gently, the way he used to, she found herself struggling to connect fully, imagining it was John instead. Later, feeling bold, Lisa tried to bring up her deeper desires with Dave. To her surprise, he responded openly, even suggesting they explore roleplay together. His enthusiasm nearly convinced Lisa to let go of her plans with John. But John grew impatient. Despite her efforts to keep him interested, he started pulling away, finally giving her an ultimatum: be with him, or he'd have to leave her life. Feeling trapped, Lisa promised to think about it, hoping to find a solution. One weekend, her obsession with the idea of a three-way left Dave suspicious. He couldn't ignore her late nights or the smudge of lipstick she'd come home with. He decided to dig deeper to find out the truth. Lisa was ready to meet with John. As they discussed plans, John made it clear: if Dave refused her request, he was done. Feeling pressured, Lisa rehearsed a speech, determined to approach Dave with confidence. Thursday night, Dave came home to find Lisa waiting, a half-empty wine bottle in front of her. Her nerves simmered as she urged herself to stay calm, to remember that she deserved this. But Dave spoke first, his tone steely. "This is about your recent distraction, isn't it? The way you've been checked out of family life for months. I suppose you want to tell me you still love me, that I'm the only one for you, but since I didn't agree to your secret plan, you're going to cheat. Isn't that right?" His words struck her hard. He saw right through her. Panicked, she tried to launch into her rehearsed speech, stumbling over her words. "It's just physical, Dave. I thought it could be fun." But his face hardened, and he demanded the name of the other man. Startled, she revealed John's name, insisting it wasn't serious, that it was only dinners and conversations. Dave didn't believe her, his mind flashing back to her disheveled return one night. Desperate, she swore nothing had happened beyond a few kisses. Seeing the pain in his eyes, Lisa began to realize the extent of her actions. She started to backtrack, ready to give up John and salvage their marriage. But Dave's resolve was unbreakable. "Your actions have shattered this marriage, Lisa," he said, his voice filled with finality. "You threatened to take our kids from me, to ruin our family." He walked out, leaving her. As he drove away, she sank to the floor, too stunned even to cry. The full consequences of her choices washed over her, filling her with dread. The next morning, she frantically called everyone, searching for any sign of Dave, but no one had seen him. She combed the city, desperate for a trace, but returned home in despair. By Monday, Lisa received a call from Dave's mother. Her children didn't want to see her, and her in-laws no longer welcomed her in their home. Lisa's guilt deepened as she realized the damage she'd caused. Desperate to reconnect with her children, she decided to visit her in-laws unannounced, hoping to bring them back. But as she pulled up to their house, she noticed her own parents' car in the driveway. Her parents emerged from the door and firmly guided her back to her car, refusing to let her inside. They explained that the children were with Dave, safe, and that he needed time to reflect. At home, her mother made tea as her father gently broke the news. Dave had taken the children to visit an old friend, Deborah, who had recently divorced. They seemed to get along well, her parents admitted, and they couldn't ignore Dave's perspective. Her father emphasized that emotional betrayal was still betrayal, and it had torn their family apart. Lisa felt the weight of her actions settle in as her parents looked at her with icy disappointment. Her father added, "Lisa, your threats to take the kids, to hurt Dave, those aren't things a family forgets." Outraged, she declared she'd fight for custody, claiming the courts would take her side. But her mother's response stilled her. "Lisa, this isn't about proof. It's about what's best for the kids." As the reality of her situation dawned, Lisa stormed out, her mind spinning with anger and sorrow. 2 weeks later, the interim court order favored Dave, who now had a stable job, a strong bond with the children, and a clear role as their primary caregiver. Lisa, with her recent financial instability, struggled to adjust to the changes. After the divorce was finalized, Lisa tried to rebuild, focusing on her children. She found solace in their company and worked to repair her strained relationship with her parents. Occasionally, she'd hear updates about Dave and his new life, feeling a pang of regret, but understanding the path she'd chosen. She reflected on the choices that had brought her here. It wasn't a perfect life, but she was learning to find peace, determined to move forward one day at a time.